Johnny Jenkins. You are watching the Johnny Jenkins Show. It's fantastic to have you with me this afternoon, live on Facebook, Twitter and YouTube on Raw's 12:51 AM and, of course, wherever you get your podcasts. I last spoke to you on Wednesday morning in the election roundup show, and we weren't in a position at that stage to tell you a result from the US election. Now, we are still seeing votes coming in. Joe Biden has taken the lead in Pennsylvania, which is seen really to be the key state at this point. If he is able to win Pennsylvania, then he is able to become the next president of the United States. And it's because of the news we discovered in the past half an hour that I can tell you for the first time that Raw News projects Joe Biden will be the 46th president of the United States of America. If elected, he will be the oldest elected president ever. He will be the 46th president of the United States. And it's very rare for a president to be able to get rid of an incumbent after just one term. So really going against quite a lot of the odds. Also, President Trump won Ohio on Tuesday. It's very rare. Since 1960s, it's been unheard of for a president to be able to win without Ohio. So lots of news to unpack as we bring in our head of news at Raw, Enoch Makungu. Enoch, just explain to us why we're making this projection this afternoon.
Well, we're making this projection, sorry about the car. We're making this projection because, as you said just a few hours ago, Joe Biden officially took the lead in Pennsylvania. We've been expecting that for a while based on mail-in ballots, but it officially happened. And so I think from that, before he needs to win Nevada, Arizona to say he's secured victory. But with Pennsylvania, I think we're happy to say he is winning. He has won.
And he will be President-elect Biden, even if Donald Trump doesn't concede and admit defeat. We should say at this stage that I haven't seen it. We've seen some places project it, but both CNN and Fox News are yet to project this result.
No, I think both CNN and Fox News are very anxious about not getting this one wrong. Fox because they called Arizona, in my opinion, and many people's opinion, too early. And CNN because, of course, they want to see themselves as the mainstream, very conservative, safe broadcaster. But I think, as far as I can tell, there is no good reason to not say Pennsylvania is going for Joe Biden and saying he's won the election.
And this is such a significant result, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, if the results stay as they are now, of course, Trump can still make a comeback in Arizona and Georgia. But if the results stay as they are now, Biden has won with the same electoral college margin that Trump had in 2016. And that was an absolute blowout. We are seeing, I think this makes probably one of the biggest electoral college victories, a truly transformative electoral college victory. Trump's incumbent who went into this election as incumbent with a good, essentially good economy, but a good economic advantage, which he held up to the very last day. He still managed to lose, making this even more terrific. I won't say terrific because it endorse anyone. Joe Biden has won the presidency by winning Florida or Ohio. He's carved a new path to the presidency. It's not been seen since at least 1960. There's so many firsts going on this election. It's generally hard to keep up with them.
And we also mustn't forget the importance of his vice president, Kamala Harris. Of course, Joe Biden was Obama's vice president up until 4 years ago. But Kamala Harris will be the first female vice president and the first vice president of color.
Yeah, after this, Joe Biden's been part of two glassing, smashing campaign tickets now. I don't think I'm the right person to fully equivocate on why it's such an amazing event, but I do feel comfortable saying just seeing this, I think it's been a great day. I shouldn't say I said it's been a great day. I think
I think it's a great day just because you can go to sleep now, right?
That is true. I can rest. I can finally rest.
What a week we've had, and we return to this discussion. The Raw News has, for the first time, projected that Joe Biden will be the next president of the United States, the 46th president. First, though, we've got some discussion to have about matters at the University of Warwick, because there's an all-student vote, which is when motions are put forward and all students can go on the SU website and vote on certain issues, really to shape the future direction of policy within the Students' Union. And one begins on Tuesday. We're discussing one of the motions this afternoon, which is the first one. Warwick SU supports UCU, that's University College Union, call for online teaching. The motion asks the SU and officers to support the stance for teaching to be made online and as accessible as possible. This comes after last week, the president of the student union, Luke Meffam, told me the SU were no longer supporting this move. Let's bring in our guests this afternoon to discuss from one side, and then we move to the other, and they all appear with me on screen. What we're going to do is allow you all to introduce yourself and tell us who you are. And yeah, let's start with that. Amara, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. Hi, my name is Amara. I'm Warwick SU's Women's Officer for this year, and I'm a third and finalist sociologist today.
Fatima?
Hi, I'm one of 2 WP officers, widening participation. I'm a second year law student.
And just elected, we should say, as widening participation officer last week. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Do you want to introduce yourself as well, just and then we know who everyone is?
Yeah, hi, my name is Asosa. I am half of the Environment and Ethics Officer team in the Student Union, and I'm also a final year, third year History and Politics student.
Fantastic. Well, thanks so much for joining me. So we've got 3 officers at Warwick Students' Union. Amara, I want to come to you first on this because the motion, if approved, when people vote from next Tuesday at 9 a.m, would support teaching to going online in line with UCU, the University College Union, demands. Tell me why this is something that's important to you.
So it's important to me because we're essentially asking students to allow the Warwick SU to actually save human beings' lives. I'm going to allow Asosa later on to talk about the health implications, and then I'll allow our widening participation officer to then talk about the implications on those who are from a widening participation background. But for now, I'm going to say the reason why this is very important to me is, and people need to be very practical about things, is UCU have already voted and have already agreed that if teaching is not moved online, they will go on strike. So we are now being pushed into a corner where if we do not vote to push everything online, there's things that can be done online, and of course labs will have to remain in person, then UCU will strike and we will have no teaching whatsoever. So it's either online teaching or no teaching, and that's the stance, that's the corner that we will be pushed into. And then in addition to that, once everything is pushed online, we will have the added benefit and the ease in order to campaign for better value, like reduced prices, because currently nothing that we're experiencing is value for money at all. Online teaching is not great value for money, but neither is half and half. But currently the university has the opportunity to make the claim that you have some face-to-face interaction, so you're still getting your money's worth. Once everything's online, we will be able to actually say that no, this is not value for money, and we can campaign for reduced fees. So there's sort of 2 views I have.
Do you say move online now to avoid people having to go on strike? And the word strike will upset many Warwick students who were here last year when we missed so much, weeks and weeks of our education due to these strikes.
Exactly, and that's exactly what it is. We know, like I'm a third year, and I'm a final year student. I know how important this year is to my degree and my future. I would love to have some teaching, and I completely will sympathize with UCU if they choose to strike, because they are striking for their lives. They do not want their members to die because they have been forced to come to work whilst we are in a lockdown, and it makes no sense whatsoever.
Many people will say they've had classes in person. I had one this morning. We all had masks. We were 2 meters away from each other. The person leading the class had a visor on. We all wiped down our desks and washed our hands as we came in. It feels very secure. It feels very safe.
But it isn't. Fatima had gave an example. We were talking quite earlier that some departments don't even follow the guidelines at all. Like, Fatima, do you want to say more about that and how some classrooms aren't following it?
Yeah, I don't want to obviously name and shame any particular departments, particular tutors, or whatever it may be. But from my own experience, I have been in seminars where the tutor wasn't wearing the mask properly. Consequently, students felt like they didn't need to wear their mask properly. There was a 2-meter distance, but then when students are leaving, entering, going in, going out, there's a lot of hustle and bustle. That 2-meter distance no longer applies. When students are waiting outside the seminar room, again, there isn't much enforcement. I feel like, of course, freedom, everybody has a decision to do what they want, but giving them too much freedom as students, I don't necessarily know how much is being enforced and how much students take it upon themselves to follow those guidelines. Okay, so why is it that you support this?
Yeah, I think just the bottom line is that we're in the midst of a national pandemic, a global pandemic, and Independent Sage told us back in September that we should, under no circumstances, unless you have to for pedagogical reasons, have face-to-face teaching. They also set out a list of things that we should be doing whilst doing online teaching as students on campus, which includes quarantining for 2 weeks once we all arrive here, and every student and every staff being tested on and before arrival at campus, and then consequently throughout our time on campus having regular testing. And those are 2 things that haven't been done and we still aren't doing. And those were requirements needed to do online teaching safely. And we're having a blend of face-to-face and online teaching, and we've not even met those barriers or those parameters. I think as well, like talking about like COVID secure classrooms and stuff, all the university can promise to do is mitigate risk. They can't promise to eradicate risk. And when we talk about mitigating risk, we have to understand that we're on some level, we're accepting the fact that some people will be exposed to risk, and some people will be exposed to the virus, and some people will unfortunately suffer from the virus. And when we look at the statistics as to who that is, the ONS figures tell us that Black men are twice as likely to die from coronavirus than white men. Black women are twice as likely to die from coronavirus as white women. Disabled people made up 59% of the death rates between March and June. So when we're looking at mitigating risk and who is still being exposed to risk, we can see that it's these protected characteristics of the marginalized groups in our society and on our campus. So I think really and truly, we just need to listen to what Independent Sage has told us and protect our students. That was the whole purpose of the Protect Our People campaign. And that's what this motion hopefully will be able to do.
Okay, Independent Sage is the sort of alternative to Sage, the Scientific Advisory Group for Emergencies. So Independent Sage say, move online. Sage say, no, it's still okay. What I find most alarming is students that go back and forth between home and university. And it's important to say at this stage that that is against government guidance. And in fact, as Reading Week for many begins this weekend, the advice from the SU, I think from all sides of the SU, we know the SU is quite split at the moment, but from all sides of the SU, is to stay at university. Fatima, as widening participations officer, and obviously new to that position, and it's great you'll be able to come on in your first week, I want to put to you what Warwick Enable say. And this is a society that represent disabled students. They're very keen on social media, from what I see, for teaching to be in person. So why is it that the SU is going against them?
From my knowledge, widening participation covers more so students from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. So I'm not familiar myself with what that particular society has said, so I don't think I can comment. But yeah, Mara, go ahead.
Okay.
I just need to highlight to everyone that keeps bringing in Enable into this discussion that even their exec are very split on this, and the exec themselves, who are disabled students, do not come to a consensus on this. And please bear in mind that a lot of disabled students came up against Warwick Enable and put forward a statement against what Warwick Enable have said, and had led to a lot of them saying, oh, I don't feel represented by Warwick Enable because of the stance that they have taken. Because like Mercedes has already said, and given the statistics, it was more disabled individuals who died or were mostly affected by COVID-19 during March, February onwards. And so although Warwick Enable took that stance, we have to be aware that that's not the stance of all of the exec, and also that's not the stance of all disabled students on campus. And so the safest thing is to ensure that we keep everyone online so that people will not die.
Okay, my apologies, Fatima. Of course, we don't have the disabled student officer, Isabel, with us this afternoon. And I think it's fair to say that the Warwick Enable Exec is just as divided as the student union itself at the moment. Well, that's one side of it. Thank you very much to all three of you for coming on to speak to me today. And of course, the voting opens at 9 a.m. on Tuesday. And that's on the Warwick SU website, warwicksu.com/vote. Thank you all ever so much and have a lovely weekend. There we are. That's one side of the story about online teaching, and it's time, I think, to explore the other side with Cam Hall, who is the co-founder of Put Warwick Students First. You may have seen him on Raw News, but he speaks today from his capacity of Put Warwick Students First. Hi, Cam. What's your immediate reaction to what you just heard?
Well, I think the first thing we have to say is that we do obviously have to recognise people's concerns with obviously the spread of coronavirus, obviously with the new lockdown restrictions, and that's something that, in my capacity as the co-founder of Put Warwick Students First, it's something that I've been saying from the start, that yes, we do have to take everything we can to mitigate risk as much as possible. But I think the thing that I think got me most from what I think it was something that Amara said when she was talking about the interests of Warwick Enable and the fact that a lot of the marginalised students on campus, and indeed all students on campus, don't share the same interests necessarily with regards to online teaching. And I think that's really typifies the approach that myself and we're putting forward really in regards to this motion, which is that there are, for some people, they will feel safer, they will prefer to have fully online teaching at this time. There are some people, myself included, who feel that I've seen the face-to-face teaching impossible, that it is COVID secure, that we do have social distancing being enforced, that we do have face masks being enforced, that the university doing a fantastic job keeping teaching spaces clean and as safe as possible on campus, that I can be confident with face-to-face teaching. So the response really to say is that students' interests are not homogenous within this. And I think it's important that students have a choice right now. And I think in its extension that students and lecturers have a choice right now as to whether they want face-to-face teaching or whether they want online teaching. And I think that the approach that we're certainly putting forward is that by letting students individually have that choice, rather than just blanketly saying to them that everything's going to be online, it's a much more conducive environment for learning.
But Cam, the bottom line here is that for everybody across the whole country, the safest place you can be right now is at home.
But you can't stay at home all the time. For example, people talk about, for example, online teaching, for example, going to seminar spaces, for example, but you still have to go to supermarkets to buy your food during lockdown. And in many ways, where you're constantly moving around a supermarket, I know that's an example I've given a lot, at least with the seminar space, you are in one seat, you wipe that space down before you take your seat, you can socially distance easily between people. It's not as easy in a supermarket. That's just one example. So yes, it is safer, you could argue, to be at home, but I think at the same time, you can't inevitably just stay at home. And I think with this situation that we're in at the moment, with face-to-face teaching being as secure, with risk being as mitigated as much as possible, students need to have a choice as to how they feel that they are taught best. And I think that choice, whether if they want to go online, they can be online and the university can support them in that. But I think additionally, if students want to have face-to-face teaching with as much risk mitigated as possible, I think they should be allowed that.
Finally, Cal, I want to push you on something we heard in that previous interview about strikes. Many students, whilst especially those that sympathise with the strikers, of course, you still do want to have your education. Everyone would prefer that no one would have to strike, right? They say that if we don't put teaching online now, then we're going to have strikes.
I think that the situation is very much that it seems the SU being talked about being backed into a corner. I don't think the SU are being backed into a corner. I think it's very much a case that if that is the case, that if people are feeling like they've been backed into a corner, I don't think we should just accept that.
Are you in support of strikes?
But I'm not in support of strikes at all. Because
then why don't you support the motion?
I don't support the motion because that's not the point of it. The fact is, with the call for UCU strikes, we shouldn't have to accept that just because we are being backed into a corner here. And I think it's important as well to recognise that with the call for strike and a particular point being raised in the motion, which is that the SU officers are being mandated to go out on picket lines. If classrooms are not COVID secure, how is a picket line COVID secure? And I think there's so many other things, and we shouldn't just put it down to the UTU as well. I think mental health is something that, I was surprised was not brought up at all.
People are very concerned about having to leave their very safe homes and accommodation to travel on a bus, which isn't very safe, to go into a university, which they feel isn't very safe. And that's also affecting their mental health. There really is. Surely you can see both sides here.
Well, I can totally see both sides. And I think it's important, and we've seen it over the last few weeks. There was the case of Finn Kitson, who was a student in a halls in Manchester who committed suicide, and his dad later went on to tweet, and I've got the tweet in front of me, and it says that if you lock down young people because of COVID-19 with little support, then you should expect that they suffer severe anxiety. And again, it's back to, I think, to that point that I've kind of been leaving here the whole time, which is that it's important for students to have choice and for risk to be as mitigated as possible. If people don't feel safe leaving their house, then they should be allowed and given all the support necessary to be taught fully online from home. But for many students, that face-to-face contact that they have with people in their seminars, that ability to just talk to a fellow human being outside their household, especially if you're stuck in halls, and I know for many first-year students, halls was not always a great time. It's an essential point for their mental health to just have that ability. So what I think we're trying to propose is very much that people have choice. And I think it's essential that people are given a choice. And by voting, for me, I'm voting against this motion because I want to preserve that choice rather than having a sort of blanket enforcement of for the online learning.
Okay, Cam Hall, co-founder of Put Warwick Students First. Thanks very much for coming to speak to me today. Thanks, of course, all to my other three guests from Warwick Students Union. So the voting opens on Tuesday, the 10th of November at 9 a.m. at warwicksu.com/vote. That's not the only motion. There's many more, but that's the one we're discussing today. The motion put forward, if approved, that Warwick SU would support the University College Union call for online teaching. Thank you to all of my guests. An interesting discussion, and pleased to hear both sides here on the Johnny Jenkins Show. If you weren't with me at the start, you may have missed the breaking news that Raw News projects Joe Biden is going to be the next president of the United States. The 46th president, former vice president, will be the oldest elected president if he is. He'll also have knocked Donald Trump out of his position after one term, which is highly unusual. I think it's fair to say Enoch Mukungu, our head of news, is really the one who has made the final call on this, Enoch. Just remind us why.
Well, it really came down to this. When Joe Biden had two paths to the White House, once he won Michigan and Wisconsin. Either he won Pennsylvania or he won Nevada and Arizona. It's now looking like he's won Pennsylvania, and so I think therefore it's safe now to say that he has won the whole thing. Yeah,
and we don't see American news outlets calling this just yet, but I think we expect before we go to bed, let's put it that way, we probably will see this being called.
I think from what I'm watching CNN almost right now, I think you can definitely tell that they expect him to win. They are hedging their bets. No one wants to be the first person to put their leg in the water and say, "All right, Joe Biden's won. It's official." But I think tensions are already rising. Joe Biden just released a statement saying, "As we saw on July 19th, the American people will decide the election, and the United States government is perfectly capable of escorting trespass out of the White House," which is obviously addressing fears that Donald Trump will not have a peaceful transition.
And a peaceful transition is one of the pillars of American democracy, isn't it? Yes. That the president loses, calls up the other person, says, "Look, I concede, you win," and then they have this period between now and January, and then the inauguration happens on January, and you have the new president. And you look back 4 years ago, and it sticks in my mind that day that Donald Trump became the president, and he was there with Barack Obama. Barack Obama, of course, disagrees with him on pretty much everything. But it was such a gracious transition between the two of them. They put their political views aside. They got on. They spent a lot of the day together. It was quite a big moment, I think, to see that whatever your views, you put that to one side and you have a gracious transition.
Yeah. and I just don't see that happening this year. Obviously, as you said, we all remember those great scenes. The scenes of Donald Trump and Barack Obama sitting side by side. The letter Barack Obama left Donald Trump trying to advise him on his presidency. I simply don't see that happening this year. Donald Trump already come out and tried to claim that all the votes committed are fraudulent. He's launched many already failed lawsuits trying to either stop the count or get votes thrown out of the count. It's almost he's all over the map. I think the speech he gave last night is the closest we're going to see him come to giving a concession speech. I don't see him calling up Joe Biden and saying, "All right, mate, you won it, fair cop." I just don't see it happening this year.
And we expect to hear from him at some point this afternoon, and if we do, we'll bring that to you live here on the show. Let's bring in, so Enoch's staying with us on the panel this afternoon, two more to bring in, Adam Gravely, who is with us now. Hi, Adam. Wow, what an afternoon.
Hello, Johnny. Yes, it has been an absolutely roller coaster of an afternoon, and who'd have thought that we might actually be really close to a final outcome.
What's fascinating for me is we, of course, spoke on Wednesday morning on the results show, and at the end of one of the pieces, I asked people to put their hand up, and I said, put your hand up if you think Biden's going to win, put your hand up if you think Trump's going to win. And the panel said Trump was going to win. At that stage, it certainly seemed that way. And now it's all sort of swinging back round.
Yes, I was one of those people that put my hand up to say that Donald Trump was going to win and continue as 45th president of the United States. And it's just really started to change. We have seen his lead just eke away. We have seen Joe Biden overtake in key areas, and now Joe Biden's path to the White House is so much clearer than Donald Trump's that I can see why we're as so close as we can be to declare it for Joe Biden.
And do you agree with our projection that Joe Biden's going to win?
I do agree with the projection that Joe Biden will become the 46th president of the United States.
Wow. Okay, one more panelist to welcome back to the show, Ollie Cranham-Young.
Hello.
Hi, Ollie. Wow,
Hi.
what a week.
I know, it's unbelievable, isn't it, really, just how much things have changed since Tuesday night.
And I'm sure I'm not the only person this afternoon who has CNN down there on mute.
Yeah.
And I just keep darting back
Of
to
course.
it.
Aren't we all?
Ollie, your take on this, because it did seem on Tuesday overnight into Wednesday that Donald Trump was going to win. He got some of those key early states. Of course, they counted lots of the in-person ballots, didn't they, first? And maybe that's why. It's interesting how it sort of all swung back around.
Yeah, I mean, I stayed up on Tuesday night. I don't think I was as mad as some people, but I stayed up until 5 a.m. And I thought I'll stay up until then. And then at that point, I'll just go to bed because I had to be up, not early, but, I couldn't, stay in all day. So, I mean, when I went to bed at 5, I was convinced, I think partly because of the scale of the Florida victory. I mean, we all talk about how it wasn't necessary that Trump had to win. Biden had to win Florida. But when we saw kind of just the extent to which it was swinging in Trump's favor, and I think a lot of people feared that, if that's replicated in a lot of the battleground states, then we could, those of us who support Biden, we could be in for quite a depressing few days. But it really has changed. I mean, I think we perhaps all underestimated just how many, how much of the postal ballots were favouring the Democrats. Perhaps we thought it might swing it a little bit back the other way, but it seems to be like the overwhelming majority of postal ballots are favouring Joe Biden. So, it really has changed since Tuesday night. It's astonishing, really.
Yeah, and Ollie, I can see quite a smile coming through. So you stayed up till 5.
Yeah.
Enoch, I want to know when you slept.
I think the first time I slept was Thursday morning around 3 a.m. Then I woke up around 7.
And last night?
Last night I went to bed around 2, woke up around 8. So.
Wow. Okay. And Adam, how's your sleep been?
My sleep has been disturbed. Sort of like waking up on the hour every hour over last night, just thinking about what's happening. Refresh on the phone. On election night, I did go to bed a bit earlier and got up at 4. So I'm starting to feel it, but no way near as much as Enoch will be feeling it right now.
Yeah. So I went to bed on Tuesday about 8, and I woke up at 2, and I got a good few hours in there. And then, as you say, you sort of wake up in the middle of the night now and you're like, what's happened? Who won? And it seems that by the time we go to bed tonight, we should know that Joe Biden is the next president. As I'm just watching CNN here, Joe Biden takes the lead in Pennsylvania, which, of course, is a very key state. And if he wins that, he wins. On the verge of presidency. And I sense that CNN, and maybe with Fox News as well, are on the verge of putting in their projection. But, of course, Raw News today, this afternoon, projecting that Joe Biden will be the 46th president of the United States. Really massive news. Let's talk about Donald Trump then. His reaction and his behaviour, I suppose, over the past few days. Adam, I think it just shows, as I was saying to Enoch a moment ago, that whatever happens, there isn't going to be a peaceful transfer.
No, I'm struggling at this stage to see how there's going to be a peaceful transfer, because Donald Trump has been on the podium. It's twice now that he's already declared himself the winner of the election. He is claiming mass voter fraud with absolutely no evidence to purport to that. We've seen attempts with lawsuits thus far not materializing. He is not going to go quietly. Obviously, they don't legally need a concession. The problem is that what will happen once it is officially declared, if it's officially declared that Joe Biden is the president, as we are projecting, what will then happen? We could start seeing violence erupt on the streets, particularly as Donald Trump has been condemned by external election observers of stoking the tensions, and we're starting to see people turning up, potentially even with guns, on the street, and that could turn into a really dangerous situation, and we need somebody to really cool the temperature at the moment.
Is there any support for Donald Trump's claims that there is fraud taking place, that voting should stop, counting should stop, and that counting has been illegitimate in some way? Adam, do you see anything that favours that?
I personally haven't yet seen any evidence to suggest that, and looking at media outlets, there aren't those things coming forward. But there are people within the Trump campaign, such as the former director of national intelligence, who is a big Trump supporter, has come out to say that they have witnessed things. They are making very serious allegations, and those allegations, if it looks like there could be some evidence, naturally should be investigated thoroughly within the legal processes. But so far, we're not seeing that.
And we've seen Trump's personal lawyer and star of Borat, Rudy Giuliani, come forward, and who seems to be leading the legal challenges. Ollie, how do you react to President Trump's actions, words over the past few days? He made a speech yesterday evening. I was asleep by then, but I caught up in the morning yesterday evening, really saying he's going to keep fighting and he thinks that he's won.
Yeah, I mean, I think I remember saying not long back that even if, unless Trump loses by a substantial majority, then he is really not going to take this lying down. And obviously we've seen the fact that Biden, it isn't the overwhelming one side for the Democrats that some people perhaps hoped. So, I mean, I kind of expected Trump to react badly, but I'm not so sure this badly. I mean, I think certain people within his team seem to be perpetuating the myth that somehow people have voted after polling has closed. But I think what they don't recognise is that I think in some states you can post ballots up to and including on polling day. So naturally, they're not all going to arrive on the day that they're not all going to arrive on polling day. But there seems to be this suggestion that people are voting later, and it's all fraudulent. And I shake my head, but then I kind of don't, because I think we have to recognise that the caveat to everything is, but this is Trump. So it's like, it really, really shouldn't surprise us that he's behaving in this way. But it's very damaging. And I think it's one of the many times that I think we can look at the United States from the UK and think, I'm so glad we don't, the protests on the streets, like outside certain counts where supporters are saying stop counting, and then in others, the Trump supporters are saying continue counting. You just look at it and think, God, I'm glad we don't behave like that in this country, and I hope we never do.
Our Prime Minister would be in number 10 by then.
It's astonishing. I think it's one of the great things about our democracy, how in the US, obviously, there's this big transition period, whereas here it's like you are kicked out the next day. I think that's amazing. I really like that about our democracy.
Fantastic. I'm just going to pop you on mute, Ollie, whilst we're not talking chisels. We get a bit of feedback otherwise. And we are hearing there's a recount in Georgia. They say also that 8,890 military ballots are outstanding, maybe more likely to favour Donald Trump there. That they'll be counted if they're returned by close of play today. Georgia is still close to call, and there will be a recount in Georgia because the margin is so small. Adam, I suppose when it gets down to the wire, as it has done in some states, recounts, I mean, it happens in the UK as well, doesn't it? When it gets close, recounts are pretty normal.
Yeah, they are very normal, and each state will have their own sort of rules around what determines a recount. I think with Georgia, it's because it's within that 1% margin. The margin is so wafer thin. It's an extra layer of just ensuring that their original count was correct, and if there are any discrepancies, then they may go to yet another recount to ensure that obviously the right outcome is what is declared.
And Enoch, your reaction to that recount? Enoch, you there?
Oh yes, sorry, sorry, my internet glitched for a second. Hello, yes, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear. Your reaction to the news that Georgia is going to do a recount?
Oh, my internet's, oh god.
Okay, maybe we give Enoch a moment to come back in with us once that's sorted. Let's go to a comment from Noah. Afternoon all. Daring to dream, Biden will triumph. Well, if our projection is right, then that is the case. Laura saying, hey, Laura, thanks so much for being with us this afternoon. Let's just, I don't know if we have got Enoch actually. We'll go back to him in a moment. I think with Donald Trump, he's now, if we assume that Biden is going to be the next president, and if our projection's right, then that is the case. Donald Trump has a period between now and January, which is sort of called the lame duck period, where you can't really do very much. Joe Biden will be president in all but name, he'll be president-elect. Adam, what can we expect over the next how many months? What, 3-4 months until January?
So in
2 months.
What would
it's November? Sorry, I'm in my head.
Yeah.
It's miles away.
You've had lack of sleep, Johnny. That's fine. So what would normally happen is you would have the transition teams from the incoming administration and the outgoing administration meet together over multiple rounds of negotiations to begin sort of looking at what the big issues are, where the path is in terms of legislation, and really doing that whole transition piece. You would normally not have an outgoing lame duck president really make much, partly because they wouldn't have the political capital to do so. However, we are talking about Donald Trump, and we know that there is nothing conventional about this president. And if he is not even willing to concede, how can we possibly expect a peaceful sort of transfer going forward? So I can see Joe Biden, if he wins, he will already start using his intelligence as former vice president of the United States and the various contacts he's got to almost start building in his own transition period of what it needs to look like, knowing he probably will not get the cooperation from the White House.
And he's obviously a man with huge experience of the White House because he was the vice president of Barack Obama for 8 years. Ollie, do you think those 8 years, in power and so close to the office of president before, are going to shape the next 4 years?
Yeah, I mean, I think they will. I think it's certainly helpful that Barack Obama. Oh, you can hear me, can't you?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was definitely helpful that Joe Biden's been vice president for 8 years prior to now, because we've seen what happens when you put someone who isn't a conventional politician in the White House. So I think it's good that he has had, more experience than in the past few decades than probably anyone else. So you'd think he's well suited for the job. But I'm still concerned as to whether he will actually. I can't see him serving a second term, and I'm not entirely sure whether he will run through an entire first term. You look at him now, as you said before, he's like the oldest president, I think, to ever be elected, hopefully, if he is. And you think, he's nearly 80. Will he serve in a full 4 years? I don't know. I think he's perfectly, well equipped for it. He has an excellent experience, but it'll be interesting to see how long he lasts in the White House for.
whatever happens, Ollie, America will elect the oldest president because Donald Trump was previously the oldest president. So he'll be breaking his own record if he's re-elected. Adam, where does age come into this for you? Because for me, on election night, watching it all and learning a lot as it goes on, I was really, you're right there, Ollie. I was really struck by how many old people are involved in the process. You've got the candidates, and many of the pundits as well. Look at sort of Nancy Pelosi too. You know, lots of these are very old people, aren't they?
Yes, we're certainly seeing a lot in terms of octogenarians really dominating US politics at the moment. And that itself is not necessarily a bad thing. We've got a huge amount of life experience at the helm, but there will be calls for younger people. So no doubt they will start looking towards the younger generation. Looking at Vice President-elect, if she is Kamala Harris, but then possibly looking even younger to the likes of Representative Joe Kennedy, who's the great nephew of former President John F. Kennedy, who was recently left Congress, or was leaving Congress in the next few months.
Enoch, where does age come into play for you here? It's been just so prominent from where I've been sitting.
Well, I mean, yeah, I think Joe Biden is the oldest presidential nominee, now oldest person to take the role of president, I think. America has increasingly become a sort of a gentrocracy in the last few years. I can't remember if that's how you pronounce the word, but it's governed by the elderly. But Joe Biden has said he wants to be the new transition president to a new generation of politics. And so we'll see if that works.
Adam just pronounced it perfectly whilst your signal was reconnecting.
If only I hadn't missed that.
It's just, and it's not even just the candidates, it's just so many people that surround it. It does, I mean, I know there are older leaders in the UK, but it doesn't seem to be to the same extent. I wonder now if, looking 4 years forward, we have a bit of a refresh, as Adam says, and we start to get people like Kamala Harris come forward. Let's talk about the vice president elect, if we're gonna call it that. Now, it's so interesting and that it's taken so long, I think, for a female person of colour, both of those independently sort of records or glass ceilings to smash, if you want to call it that. First female person of colour to become the vice president. She has, I think, quite a lot of influence on Joe Biden and will shape quite a lot of the policy. Ollie, is that something you agree with? I must unmute you first, sorry. Continue.
Oh, sorry. No, I think, yes, she has, as you say, and I think that's right, because, I mean, they run on the same ticket, don't you? So you shouldn't expect there to be huge ideological differences between them. But, I mean, what I've seen of Kamala Harris, I remember watching the vice presidential debate, I was quite a big fan. I thought she came across brilliantly. And I think it's a really menial point, but in the debate, I think you noticed how she smiled a lot and seemed very happy. And I think that came across, like, brilliantly with voters. I know it's not exactly an excellent point to be making, but I think, you know, she just comes across as a genuinely really nice person. And I have no doubt that if Biden is president-elect, I think we can hopefully assume now that she will be in pole position to be the first female president of the US. And, you know, as I say, I have not seen much of her so far, but from what I have, I'm quite impressed.
And we think that in 4 years' time, there seems to be somewhat of a consensus on the panel. In 4 years' time, Joe Biden won't be standing again once he wins this time, because he is old. There's no two ways about it. It is old. Ollie, how do you feel about President Harris?
Yeah, I'm really enthusiastic about the prospect of it. As I just said, I haven't heard and seen much from her so far. The only kind of bit I've seen, which is probably the same as most people, is the vice presidential debate, and I thought she came across excellently. So, I mean, there are other people, though, let's not forget, in the Democratic Party. I think a common one that people kind of refer to as AOC. So I think there's a lot of upcoming talent in both parties, to be fair. But I'm quite excited at the prospect of President Harris, I must have to say.
I think, and maybe one of you can correct me if I'm wrong here, that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, AOC, as you mentioned there, is too young to become the president. At the age of 31 now, you have to be, I think it's 45, to be the president of the United States?
I think it's 35. I will check though.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe just squeeze that in. Whilst Enoch gets on the old Google, then. And this is an interesting comment. Kamala Harris, the US's answer to Nicola Sturgeon. I don't know if that's a positive or negative thing, but that's certainly a link I haven't seen before. Oh, here we are. Noah tells us you have to be 35. So yes, AOC should be, could
4
be.
Years time. 4 years time.
I wonder maybe if AOC's time is later on, actually. Adam, what's your thoughts on this? And maybe we shouldn't get ahead of ourselves 4 years ahead. But do you see Kamala Harris being the Democratic nominee?
Well, certainly, if she is elected as Vice President of the United States and she has a good term in that, this will be almost a running leap towards the presidency. It is very common that the Vice President will look to become the next President of the United States. There's a chance, and it's a really slim chance, that Joe Biden might decide in his last year to give way to actually bring in Kamala Harris as the first female president of the United States, which could secure her in terms of actually giving her the legitimacy to run as a president, and it would also bypass the requirement that a president can only do 2 terms. She'd get a mini run through for it. But obviously we could look at other people such as AOC possibly coming in. It is probably a little bit too soon for her, but she will certainly start to try to push that, because it's unlikely that we'll see Bernie Sanders running again, although we could see Elizabeth Warren, for example. And the Republicans themselves might start be looking for a female candidate. They might look at former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley. She could be a potential candidate, and it could be a battle for the White House in 2024 between 2 female candidates, which would be another historic moment.
That would be a very big moment. I'm just seeing that we're expecting a few more results to come in from Arizona momentarily. I don't know if we'll fit that in on our show before 4 o'clock, but if we do, we bring the news to you live here on Raw 12:51 a.m. I'm Johnny Jenkins. Thanks ever so much for being with me this afternoon, or perhaps not watching, but listening, because of course we're available anywhere you get your podcasts if you ever miss it. And if you're not with us live and you're listening and watching in the future, then hello, good to be with you today. Let's just move away from America, and we'll return if there is any breaking news, which we don't seem to be in short supply of at the moment. Let's turn away to America and towards the UK and this second lockdown that we are in as of yesterday. Day before? Yesterday, I think I'm right. Yeah. When, as someone put in the messages, we are all very tired. I certainly am. This lockdown second lockdown, we were sort of expecting it to come at some point. And when we spoke here on the Johnny Jenkins Show a week ago, we didn't know this was going to happen. It all unfolded very quickly. Enoch, what happened then? Because I first heard about it on, I think it was Friday night.
Oh, well, it seems someone in the government leaked it. There was a meeting of 4 people: Boris Johnson, Michael Gove, Rishi Sunak, and Matt Hancock. And it seems of that group, perhaps everyone but Boris Johnson leaked it to someone. And it was space for a day. Boris went from announcing it on Monday to announcing it that very Saturday.
Can we just talk about what happened with that press conference?
Oh, yes.
On Saturday. God. So as you say, it was going to be announced on Monday. Boris Johnson did hold a press conference yesterday. But it was going to be announced on Monday, and then it was all sort of hubbub going around, well, we're going to lockdown, we're going to lockdown. And I think he sort of said, right, let's just announce it. Saturday, announce it. We're going to announce it at 4 p.m. That's when our press conference is going to be. So we were sort of ready. We're all, on edge. Are we going to lockdown? Are we not? I ran to the hairdressers, got that sorted. And then it was, no, it's going to be 5 o'clock. And sort of like, okay, fair enough, busy times, we've got a lot to do. And then we all sat down at 4:45, watching the build-up, and then it slipped to 6:30, and I don't think we saw the Prime Minister until nearly 7. What does that say to you, Adam, about the Prime Minister's regard for the British people, that he was nearly 3 hours late to the press conference?
I think it really shows No, I'm not going to really say so much about the regard for the British people, because I think, quite frankly, it shows a complete lack of preparation. And I think that was down to the fact that Boris Johnson was potentially going to rein back from even announcing a lockdown. So he's had various people whispering in his ear. So from one side, he's had Rishi Sunak wanting to keep the economy open. From the other side, Matt Hancock wanting to put the health of the nation first. And from Michael Gove, well, who knows which way he flips at any one time on this issue. And that's one of the reasons why we think it was probably leaked, in the fact that Boris Johnson might have been about to change his mind over a lockdown, so it was leaked, which forced a press conference. And then there's the fact that, well, what on earth are they going to say? I think they then had to do the whole hurrah of getting the information together, and they were not united on a particular statement, because Boris will have had to try to get his cabinet on board. I imagine he had a lot of a hard time there, and trying to identify backbench rebels such as Steve Baker to try and see if he can win them over.
And there were 32 Conservative rebels, and many more abstained, including former Prime Minister Theresa May abstaining on that vote just the other day. Ollie, where do you sit on this? Because it's taken a very long time to announce this. There's two sides. One says, oh, well, can't make his mind up, needs to get on with it, etc. The other side says, no, look, there are serious economic damages of being in lockdown, and they were trying to offset as much of that as possible. And they have now extended the furlough scheme till March. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, on the furlough scheme for March, I'm a bit frustrated, really, because I think when we remember, what was it, 3 or 4 weeks ago, there was kind of all this debate about was Manchester going to get a little bit more money it was asking for pennies in the grand scheme of things. And there was kind of just debate between Andy Burnham and Boris Johnson. And then once it was kind of became evident that we were going to go into a second national lockdown, which included the south of the country, all of a sudden we could extend the furlough scheme to March and the money could be found. So, I mean, to me, that has really frustrated me, and it just reinforces the north-south divide in that way. But, I mean, going back to what you said about press conference, I think I agree with what Adam said. I think part of that was trying to win over MPs like Steve Baker, who have been opposed to a second lockdown. But, I mean, part of me thinks whether he's just trying to you have to remember the majority that Boris Johnson's got at the moment. It's nearly 80, isn't it? You would think like he'll be more inclined to ignore them at this stage, but clearly he is still determined to get as many people on board as possible. But as you say, trying to find a balance is impossible, and I don't think you can do it. So, I mean, the government have tried, and I mean, it's good that they've extended the furlough scheme till March, but it's frustrating to see how many kind of small debacles we've had in the past few weeks, like over Manchester, like over free school meals. If we were just going to be able to, at the drop of a hat, extend the furlough scheme by 6 months, I think the communications of it's been quite poor in recent months.
Yes, Enoch and I from the south. Adam, where are you from? I don't actually know.
From Northampton.
Okay, so we're going to include
Midlands.
That in the south then. Okay, so as the most northern of the southerners here, Adam, what's your thoughts on Ollie's point about how Manchester got? Oh, let me get this right. It was a minimum of 65% is what Andy Burnham wanted of wages, and they were offered. Let's come back to Ollie. They were offered 60%, I think.
Yeah.
So long ago.
I mean, yeah, I think it was to the tune of about 5 million or something that they were asking for. Yet now all of a sudden we can pay 80% of everybody's wages in the country. I mean, it's a big slap in the face to people from the north, I have to say. And I don't think it's going down very well on a lot of red wall seats.
So, Adam, your reaction to that, then, please.
Well, I definitely think Boris Johnson would. He ignores the North at his peril. I do have a declaration of interest in the fact that my mother is from Lancashire, so I'd like to think I have enough Northern blood in me to be able to sort of self-declare a Northerner. And we saw Andy Burnham being branded on Twitter as King of the North from the famous Game of Thrones program. So the fact that this was a fight that was not good for Boris Johnson, and the fact that we have now seen various U-turns on things like the furlough scheme as well, is sort of just going to play to the fact that Andy Burnham can say, well, look, I fought for this. I fought for what we were getting, and now finally the government are waking up to say that they're going to bring in some form of a furlough scheme. But what this will do for the remnants of the Red Wall, it will probably rebuild that, and elements of the blue seats in the north are at risk of falling in 2024 if the Conservative Party don't start getting themselves ready for actually trying to hold on to it. I don't think they're expecting to hold them.
Let's talk about how this affects students, because for many, their reading week begins this afternoon and continues until a week on Monday. And usually at this point, I would probably be on a train back to Essex and having a few days out. And I'm not. I'm here. I'm staying here. The president of the student union, Luke Meffan, told me last week everyone should stay here. But people are going to be going back and forth. There wasn't much notice of all this. People maybe had trains booked and things. Just how damaging is that to the country's effort to contain the virus?
I think the horse is truly out of the horse is truly out of the stables at this point. I know far too many people have already gone home, despite, as you mentioned, our interview with Luke Meffan last week, where we said he begged people to stay at university. University has begged people to stay at university. The government has begged people to stay at university. It's simply not happening. People do not want to be stuck here over a second lockdown. They want to go back to their families. They do not want to be stuck in awful student housing, probably with limited funds, lack of opportunities for work. They want to be somewhere they feel safe and secure. And I think this really should have been thought through before lockdown was put in, and before university came back, in fact.
And the government advice says you should stay at university. That is one of the sort of caveats of us still having in-person teaching, as we were discussing earlier. Ollie, do you feel that people should be going back? And whose fault is it if they do go back?
No, I don't think people should be going back. I mean, a lot of the people, well, a handful of people that I live with, I live with 6 other people, and what happened was when it was kind of briefed on Friday night that we were going to be getting into another lockdown by Thursday, it's obviously just gone. What a handful of my flatmates, I should say housemates, what a handful of them did was weren't home last weekend, so they were back in time for when the lockdown started on Thursday. So I think that was a sensible thing for them to do. I personally didn't go home, but I know a lot of them did, and obviously they were still within the rules because the lockdown didn't come into force until Thursday. So I mean, and we have to think, well, had that not been briefed, we wouldn't have found out until perhaps later earlier this week, and then there would have been no opportunity to go back home. So I think people should be staying at university because that is the government advice. But thank Lord for the leak, because if it wasn't for them, then a lot of people who were desperate to go home wouldn't have been able to unless they were willing to break the rules.
And we have seen, talking of Manchester, some extraordinary scenes at the University of Manchester just yesterday, as many students woke up to see fencing around their accommodation, people saying to them, you're prisoners, and then sort of joking around the people that are putting up fences. That's not going to help the sort of the student mental health crisis. Ollie, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I don't think it will help. I think the mental aspect of this has been completely disregarded, I think, particularly in terms of freshers, because if you're in a flat, this is the first time you've ever moved away from home, and you're in, say, a flat at uni, and you're with a lot of people that you don't really get on with any of them. I feel like it's just in itself is very kind of isolationist. But imagine if you happen to be put with people, and it is potluck really, that you don't get on with, like you are really on your own, and the government's saying you're not allowed to go home. So as much as I say, yeah, people should follow the guidance, it is really difficult because inevitably there are going to be a handful of people that are really, really finding this time tough because of who they've been put with and, the inability to leave. So I sympathise with people whilst also wanting them to follow the rules. And again, it's like the balance we had before. Like, how do we find it?
I was interviewing a student at the University of Manchester earlier on for another radio station, and he was so distressed about it all. And it's just been so peculiar. Look, we're fast approaching 4 o'clock. I want to say thanks so much to Adam and to Ollie for coming on the show. Have a lovely weekend. Have a lovely reading week, and we'll see you very soon.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And let's just return in our final minute or so to Enoch and this US election still going on. Enoch, just briefly, what can we expect to see over the rest of the day?
Over the rest of the day, we should hopefully see a final result from Pennsylvania. If not tonight, then by tomorrow morning. Also, Nevada should be coming in fully counted today. Arizona might take a little bit longer, but maybe looking at something like a week. That's the potential timeline I want to put that on. Then from there, we'll see whether or not we'll see any automatic recounts of Trump sues anyone to get some recounts done. But in Georgia, this is interesting. Georgia obviously already going to a recount, but also crucially, it looks like Georgia may now be going to 2 Senate runoffs because the incumbent senator for Georgia, Perdue, he's now lost he's now lost. So we might see the Democrats still have a chance to take control of the House, not the House, the Senate.
And whatever happens, you'll be back on Monday.
Absolutely. Monday Insight, 3 p.m. Do you want to miss it?
Okay, Enoch, thanks ever so much, and I hope you get a good sleep at some point over the weekend.
Oh, God, I'd hope so too.
That's Enoch, and we couldn't go ahead of the news here at Raw 12:51 a.m. Thanks ever so much for being with me on What a Week. I hope that everybody, if you get a reading week, has a lovely rest and a catch up with everything. A reminder once again, Raw News projects that Joe Biden will be the 46th president of the United States, the oldest elected president, replacing the incumbent Donald Trump. And what a week we've had following the news. I'll be back next Friday, 3 o'clock. I hope you can join me once again then on the Johnny Jenkins Show. Have a lovely weekend. Bye-bye.